My name is Julius Cephas. I'm president of the union at the Port of Wilmington, 1694-1. Tonight, we have a great show. We have a panel. We're going to talk about charter schools. And every week, you have different people coming on telling you about charter schools, enroll your kids. We're going to give you a little background and try to let you see a different side of what's been told to our community. But before I go to our panel, I would like to dedicate the show, since we're talking about teachers and everything, to some great teachers at George Grade School. One of my favorites was Mr. Hart. No nonsense, took care of us and made us become great men and took our potential and worked with it. Mr. Dickey Wright and Mr. Jones, great men. I know there's others in other schools, but right now I'd like to dedicate the show to these three great teachers. Also, I would like to, Miss Betty Robinson, if you see your grandson, I need him to come and see me, so let him know. But again, getting back to before I go to our guests, I want to give the Sunset at the Legislation Hall a lot of credit. They've been doing a lot of great things to make the port come in compliance. The Port of Wilmington, we believe that the governor, Jack McHale, Alan Levin, and Monica are trying to break up a union after the decision from Kinder Morgan. They're doing everything they can to destroy our union. Again, Jack McHale, Alan Levin, and Monica, who used to be the personnel director for the city of Wilmington. Now she works for the state. And we were definitely going to have a show about that. We're going to have a show about the impact of the Port of Wilmington. But again, and Gene Bailey, the port director. And I'm not going to let them off the hook because what they're doing is wrong. It's nothing but another Crystal Whitney from New Jersey with the bridge. And they're trying to do that at the Port of Wilmington. But again, I would like to introduce my guests, and I want them to introduce themselves, and we're going to go into questions. So start off with the president of City Council. Go ahead, introduce yourself.
Theo Gregory, City Council President.
I'm Mike Matthews. I'm a teacher in Red Clay. I'm also the president of the Red Clay Education Association, and thank you for having me, Julius.
Okay.
Nancy Willing, probably best known for Delaware Way blog.
Okay. One of the first questions I want to ask is that, what is the difference between public schools and charter schools? Who owns public schools? Who owns charter schools?
Well, simply put, we all still own public and charter schools. They're still primarily funded through public taxpayers. Charter schools, however, are granted a certain amount of autonomy in their governance, financial structures, operation structures. They have their own independently run school boards. These school boards are not held up to public voters. So they're still entities of the public, just they have their own rules of operations.
So who controls these rules? When you say they, is it a private company? Well, I know with the public schools, the community votes for the school boards. The charter schools, I don't believe, now let me know if I'm wrong, they don't have an election.
No.
So who controls that? You say they, who are they?
Well, each charter school has its own school board.
Who picks the school board?
The leadership, the community of the school picks the school board. There's a president of a school board. I know one of the charter schools in the city of Wilmington, their president doesn't even live in the state of Delaware. So I know that's an interesting tidbit right there. But the school community, the executive directors of the schools generally serve on the school boards. But again, one of the concerns of mine is that where is the accountability and true transparency if you have more than 20 schools in our state, charter schools, that don't have publicly elected school boards, as well as, the vote text, they are not publicly elected.
Okay.
You indicated that they're not privately owned and they're not privately owned, but you can have a situation where a corporation is so embedded in the school in terms of owning the building and in terms of directing curriculum and in terms of the school owing loans back to that company that for-profit in fact is running the school. So while they shouldn't own it, they in fact can own it. And to answer your question about board development, it comes from leadership, as was indicated. But once it's set up and you're moving along, the board membership changes like any nonprofit. You have a nominating committee, and people nominate people, then they vote people on the board from within the board.
Okay.
Not people, but from within the board.
I don't think my question, maybe I'm not saying it right, but who's doing the nomination? Who's putting these people on these boards? You know, I'm not.
Board members. It should be board members. It's like board development for any nonprofit. For example, I don't want to tie a nonprofit to this our discussion, but let's say you have the ABC nonprofit, and their mission is to help the homeless. They have 7 persons on the board. When 2 people go off, the remaining 5 will vote the other two people back on. We'll vote 2 people to the board.
Nancy, do you want to add to this conversation?
Yeah, I would just say that one of the distinctions in the state of Delaware is that each charter is considered a district, which is really kind of, it's a perspective. And also just to agree with Theo that what they could own is the building itself. And we do have a unique situation here with Theo's old school that a corporation came in to run the school, ended up buying the building very cheaply. It was a real strange progression of mortgage exchanges. So now the business that was managing the school owns the building and pretty much can demand to run the management because they own the building. So that's something to keep an eye on. But
There's a lot of entanglements in there.
Yeah. It sounds like it's a lot of entanglement, and I'm not really getting what I'm asking for. But okay, what's the difference between school choice and school vouchers, and why not? Why we don't have school choices and school vouchers?
We do have school choice. As I understand it, when choice was rolled out in Newcastle County, it was an absolute situation, absolute choice, which means if I put an application in for my child to go from A school to B school, then my child could go to B school if there was space in that school. They were not supposed to consider academics, behavior, or anything else. My child could go, but that immediately went by the wayside, and they started to evaluate the child that wanted the choice in based on behavior and academics and attendance and other things. So it wasn't choice, it was cherry picking. That's different than choice. Then we go to charter. Vouchers would be if I take public dollars that would go to a public school, I give a percentage of those dollars to a parent, and the parent in turn can then take their child to a private or Catholic school and use that money to send their child there. So we don't have vouchers. We don't have vouchers. That didn't win the day. The compromise for vouchers, for those people who are proponents for vouchers, was charter schools. And what you do with charter schools, then there are all these political dynamics where some charter schools, in fact, look like private schools. Those are the politics of the situation.
And the choice also started with free transportation, and that stopped. Am I correct that it used to be? But certainly right now charter schools enjoy a transportation budget, and they get to keep any money they don't spend, which is actually violates our Delaware Code. It's only been allowed for the last couple of years in the epilogue language, which is high level people
What do you
understand.
mean?
In other words,
the money. Okay, so if I, just for the audience, if I get $1 million and I spend $500,000, but the other $500,000 I didn't spend, you say we keep it?
A public district, Christiana, that $500,000, they'd have to give it back to the general fund.
Okay.
Newark Charter School, in fact, has a 5-mile radius, but it's the formula for giving them transportation dollars is the same as another charter school. But they get to keep that money, and they get to do. There's no accountability for what they do with that money.
So they can take that $500,000 that they didn't spend, and they can utilize it any way they want.
Anyway, they can give the executive director a big bonus. They could do whatever they want. There's no accountability for that.
Yeah.
And what I want the community to understand, these are your tax dollars. This is your money. So this is why we're bringing this show. So I hope you call somebody, tell them, because we want to give you a different side, and I'm gonna keep my opinion as a host out of it, but I just want you to get a different view of when people come on and tell you about the charter schools. Go ahead, Nancy.
Well, I don't know if anybody caught the video for Brown versus Board of Education, where Jay Street was talking about choice. And that the kids in Wilmington, because there is no money to bus choice kids, they can't choice out. They have no, if they don't have money to get to the bus, or parent driving them, that kind of thing. The charters will come pick you up, but the choice, you can't. The choice isn't served by that.
And what's the choice in charter?
Choice is is a district, a public, traditional public school, saying I might offer a special. I might offer something that your kid, the parent says, well, we want to give that kid that opportunity, and so that they get a chance to choice in. And
choices. I have a sixth grader. My sixth grader, based on the feeder pattern, is supposed to go to school A.
Right.
I then timely fill out the paperwork for my child to go to school B. When choice was first rolled out, my child should have been able to go to B, intra-district, absolutely, without any regards to academics or behavior. Immediately, they started to pick over the applications and look at them and decide, well, we have an academic issue here, we have a behavior issue here, we have an attendance issue here. If it's favorable, yeah, we want that kid to choice in. If it's not favorable, no, we don't want the kid to choice in. That was the game. I represented a kid in that regard, and the kid had gotten their application in timely the first year of choice. And you could see when it got to the school district, it had been changed. And they said, well, the kid didn't get his application in timely, so the kid couldn't go. So from the outset, politics were played with choice.
Okay. Now let me ask you about kids with special needs. Kids with special needs, if your kid's artistic or something, charter schools will not accept him. And the reason why I'm saying that, because what I've heard and read, that because that would drop the scores. Is that true?
Well, I'm a special education teacher.
Right.
I teach in Red Clay, Richardson Park Elementary. This is a grave concern of mine, and it's actually being addressed on Representative Kim Williams's Enrollment Preferences Task Force, which is taking a look at the enrollment preferences and decisions made by charter schools and some magnet schools to see if their applications processes, their applications are asking questions that may cause individuals with special needs or behavior issues to end up not applying, or may give a charter school or another magnet school or choice school cause to not accept the application of a student.
So what you're saying is that, and I just want to break it down to the viewing audience. You're saying that our tax dollars, that these kids, that whoever started creating the charter schools, choice schools, whatever, that wasn't in play. So that we're taking our tax dollars and certain people are being discriminated against. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't even know if we can use the word discriminate, because I think their tactics have been
tactics, but if they're not using, if they're denying a segment of the population, what do you call that?
You know what doesn't lie is statistics. And
that's my point.
The statistics show that they are. This woman just sent this data right from that I sent you guys earlier. That of the 6 top charter schools, there's 11% low income on the average, and but there's less than 30% are low income, and they're mostly white. And so, and then on the other extreme, what we've gotten is there's 7 of the charter schools in Newcastle County that are over 70% low income, and they're also 70-90% black. So that's a segregation, de facto segregation. But the statistics of some of these very successful high-scoring schools is that they have a very small percent of African American, very small percent of ELI, English language learners, and special ed. So they don't have to spend a lot of extra money. If all the students that aren't getting into these charters are in the regular schools, there's a lot of extra money that comes with special ed. There's a lot of extra money that comes with ELI. Those are extra teachers.
Okay. I want to answer your question.
Okay.
I believe you said the issue of special ed kids
or needy kids
was not in play when they put charter in place.
Okay, yeah.
It was in play.
Okay.
Guess why?
What?
You weren't even supposed to consider it. You're supposed to have a lottery. If I apply, I get in.
Okay.
if there are too many kids who apply for a grade, it's a blind lottery. How can you go from a blind lottery to not having as many special needs kids as another school? A trend is a trend, a stat is a stat. But yet you have schools where you see you don't have that many special needs kids. It wasn't even supposed to be considered. 5 mile radius was something that's supposed to be considered. This thing about some kind of special
Specific
interest or in the school was supposed to be considered. But special needs was not supposed to be considered until you get to a point where what they do now is look at the application and they pick over the application and they exclude people. That's what, but it's not supposed to be the case. Now let me just do this. The law says there's another area where you can have a preference, and that's at-risk kids. At risk, R-I-S-K. That's what it's supposed to be. And it's defined as students who are in danger of failing. Well, I'm told by the Department of Education now that doesn't mean that, but that's what the law says. It means at-risk means special needs kids. It doesn't say special needs kids. Every special need kid is not in danger of failing. That's 2 different categories. But they want to define it as special needs, and then therefore we just can't do a special needs school. There's one at-risk school down in, I don't want to say the name because I may be wrong and then I'll get sued. That's down in Kent County, or I believe it is, and it does have this at-risk designation, high population special needs, just coincidental, but there are none anyplace else. But at-risk does not mean special needs. But I'm going to go back and recap. Special needs was dealt in charter.
But it's not.
You're supposed to just take them.
Okay.
You take them and provide the same services with them for any other kid, just like any other public school.
So what you're saying is, and I'm gonna go to the next question. What you're saying is that it was there, but it's just not being applied. It's
being manipulated.
And I want people to understand also what happens about, okay, when the race to the top was all this money, what happens after the race to the top funding stopped? Then what happened? Because right now I think the federal government was issuing $250 million now for the charter schools. Now they just went up to $300 million. What happens to after the race to the money to the top stops? What happens?
Well, race to the top. As a teacher, Delaware received $119 million in a race to the top. If you were to ask most teachers on the street, they'd say that the program has been a big bust. Ask the governor, you're going to hear a different story. Most of that money didn't make its way into our classrooms. So in terms of what happens when race to the top goes away this year, it goes away June 30th. I don't see much changing. I don't see much happening. We are still going to have to work with our children with special needs. We're still going to have to work with our ELL children. We're still going to have to work in red clay with a 50% poverty level in our schools. And in terms of race to the top, it did very little, if nothing, to address those needs.
Let me kind of answer your question this way. You said, what happens when race to the top ends?
Right.
Your question kind of assumes that it was a good thing.
No,
No,
it
just
wasn't. Well, if it did, let me
Because I tell you what
Let me
what
find it
Let me
then.
tell you what happens.
I just asked the question.
Let me tell you what happens when race to the top ends. Life goes on as usual.
Well, let me.
That's the simplest way I can put it.
Okay,
to
but
you.
I didn't say it was a good thing. I was just asking the question because it is.
Life goes on as usual.
Go ahead, Nancy.
I would just say that the biggest disappointment with Race to the Top is that it's another way to set No Child Left Behind. It says we'll be in competition. The states that do this, and this. One of them was to adopt Common Core strategies. If you had all these things on your checkbox, then you were awarded that money. But the problem is that it did not get into the classroom. If you want to, No Child Left Behind was basically about solving an achievement gap problem. And the way it's sort of flowed is that they dumped a lot of money into central offices. When if you look at achievement gap, you have to ask a teacher, they'll say, you reduce my classroom size and give me extra teacher support. And that way the kids are going to get individual attention. But so if we'd used all that money and actually put it in classrooms to reduce class sizes and give more teacher support, then we might actually have an achievement gap.
But there's another part to this, and that is this. Race to the top, millions of dollars. Many of those millions of dollars was recycled dollars from consolidated plan monies, titles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that was already supposed to be providing supports to the schools. Wasn't new money. So my fear is this: when Obama is out of office and we got our new president, what they're going to call it? Lift to the top, leap to the top.
Okay.
You got Bush who said "No Child Left Behind." My problem is that we have this culture developing now at the federal government level where they say we know how to educate your kids. So you go from No Child Left Behind to Race to the Top. Then you get another president, they're going to call it something else. We are falling victims to the federal jobs programs that come along under each president. The Public Employees Program, the CETA program, the Jobs for Delaware Grads program, all these different programs, the model cities and everything. But each president comes along and says, oh, we're going to implode this because it didn't work, we're going to give you something else. I would like for the federal government to give block grant monies to the state where we have a voice, and that's the way the money is disseminated from the ground up. Then PTAs, then schools, then school districts, boards of charter schools can say how they think the money should be spent. This notion of the federal government dictating to states how to educate their kids is wrong.
Let me just hold up, Nancy. Let me ask about the bill HB 23. And is it in committee? Are they voting on it? Can somebody talk about that and let our community know
having
about
a
that?
recording of school boards?
No, HB 23, the bill.
Yeah, that's
What is HB?
yeah, that's the recording of school boards
Okay.
for all
What bill
19
are you interested in?
Yeah,
What-
that's the bill I'm interested in. The public meetings on charter school
Yeah.
boards and directors.
in all school districts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all meetings. and
So
all-
where we at with that? Do anybody know?
It's not going anywhere.
But wait a
The
minute.
Democrats don't want it.
What is the bill?
The bill would require all 19 school districts and all charter schools in the state of Delaware to record their school board meetings and post them on their websites within a certain time after that meeting.
But they now are noticed for public to attend, and the public can attend.
Yes.
And they do generate minutes from the meeting, they're just not recorded.
They do, but the concerns from some in the public are that the minutes aren't a 100% accurate or even engaging capture of what is going on in these meetings. As someone who's gone to Red Clay School Board meetings for the past 5 years, there is nothing that minutes can capture.
Well, I agree with that.
And we were one of the first districts to record our meetings. We don't need legislation for that, but I do want this legislation to pass
But
to hold our school districts and charters accountable.
Right now, it isn't going anywhere. But I do want to chirp in to say that I was looking at Title I a little bit today, Section 1118, which is the parental involvement section of those monies. And it clearly says that the law says that not only that Race to the Top in Delaware should have had each district and each school, which is each charter school because it's a district, has to have a written policy, a written plan for parent involvement. And the key is that those monies, as Theo pointed out, those monies are flowing in anyway. They've just been reassembled. But the monies for Title I going to schools of low income, percentage of low income, those monies can be used to transport parents to these meetings. So in other words, if you want to have a kid and you want to try and get your kid into a better opportunity somewhere that the charter schools are always talking about, they still can't get there at night. They still can't get there if they don't have their own transportation.
Okay, let me ask a question to the president of the union. Everybody can chime in. What do you think this charter school and the administration is doing to the unions? Because I've been hearing that they're trying to break up unions. So what's your opinion on it, especially being the president of the union?
Well, we're strong. We are strong in Red Clay. We've got almost 30 schools, 1,200 members in our union. It's obviously.
How many have you lost though since the charter school started?
Well, I don't have data on that. I know that in Red Clay we haven't actually lost many. We may have lost teachers over the years, but we haven't lost positions. We are up in the past 10 years. Our enrollment. We are now the largest enrolled school district in the state of Delaware. I think we've seen probably a 10% enrollment increase over the last 10 years. But the concerns that we have for teachers in these charter schools is that there is no due process. A lot of these charter school due process for teachers who may be accused of non-performance or something like that. Many charter schools see a great deal of turnover. This is my first year as president of the Red Clay Education Association. I've been on our executive board for 4 years, and I go to the new hire orientations. And every year at new hire orientation in Red Clay, I hear from at least 3 or 4 teachers who've accepted jobs in Red Clay because they've left positions in charter schools that they don't feel have the operational, organizational, or management models that would lead those charter schools to be as successful as they
Now,
could
can
be.
I ask you a question? Do the charter schools have the same, do they got to go through the same qualifications
Yes.
to be, now what I'm hearing that the charter school teachers are not as certified as the public.
No, they are. They still require the same state. They need to be overseen by the Department of Education. They need to be certified. They need to take the praxis exams to get certified in their content area. They are fully certified, fully qualified. However, if you were to look at charter school employment statistics, you'd see that many of the staff at charter schools are far less experienced.
But let me do this. Let me offer an observation. In 2006, 2005, I know up to that point in time, the law did not require that charter school teachers be certified. Practice one or two. If you read the legislative history of the charter school law, it said that they wanted charter schools to be innovative and creative
Yes.
and move in different directions. And that
Right.
was supposed to be the hallmark
That is correct.
of different
Yes.
charter schools. Now, from my understanding, I don't know if that law has been changed or not. Now, what happened though, then you get No Child Left Behind coming along and Race to the Top, layering these federal mandates. But as I understand it, the state law was never changed. But then I got into a conversation with a state official, and they told me that that provision that said you didn't have to be certified went to elementary schools. And I know I can read pretty good, and I told them, no, that word elementary was not in there. You did not have to have praxis 1 or 2, nor did you need to be certified. But somewhere it changed. It wasn't announced to the world, it wasn't announced to the schools, but it became so.
You're correct,
Okay.
and I should clarify, even charter schools want to make sure that the staff they have on board
Okay,
are certified.
I'm going to go to.
Except
I'm
for
going-
Teach for America. 'cause
Okay,
they
I'm going to
don't
go
have
to another question real quick, but before I do, I'm going to put you on the spot, President. You can handle it. Are y'all going to go after these schools, these charter schools, to be unionized? Because you know they have less benefits, they have a lot of less things that they would need the protection. I think one charter school is already trying to be unionized. What's
Well,
your
yeah,
feelings on that?
That's Delaware College Prep, which is a charter school that's authorized by Red Clay. They held a vote 2 years ago they've only got about 20, little over 20 folks on staff there.
Did they win?
They did. However, the problem is that the school board didn't want to ratify the contract. This is the school board with the president who actually lives in Philadelphia.
Okay, wait a minute. So you're saying by law they was right to get a union, did everything right, and the school board will not. So are they in court about this?
No,
In litigation?
it's gone to the PERB. And the problem, though, is that the school is in such a state of dysfunction that a majority of the original staff members who took that vote over 2 years ago are no longer working there.
So in other words, and I want people to understand something, this is one of the problems that when you don't have a union, you could be ousted.
And
Yeah.
two of the staffers were.
And that's what happens. And a lot of people, when they try to organize unions, you could be ousted. And they voted on it, they won. Wait a minute. They voted on it, they won, but they still wouldn't ratify it. Okay, let me
say this. I am severely pro-union. I'm going to say that. But being the president of Wilmington City Council, who I am as a person in my community, I can't get caught up in, I'm not going to get caught up in this issue of union or non-union unless someone tells me one best educate my child than the other. So if you make that a part of the argument, I'll get involved in it.
Okay.
My concern is this. There's a whole group of people in Wilmington that are being pushed into a corner and can't be educated. That's my problem. But if you tell me the union gives them a better education and creates that better environment, I'll argue that. If you tell me non-union, I'll argue that.
But wait a minute.
But
But
my
that-
concern are the
okay,
kids.
but mine's too. But my question was directed to him. The reason what I'm saying is though, if they did everything by the law, they won, but yet it seemed like the state broke the law by not ratifying.
I can agree with all that.
That's the
But
whole thing.
I
If you're
think
going
I
to
have to
educate,
sit
if you're
here-
going to educate your kids, you do everything right and you do it the right way, and you're still not rewarded. But I want
But
to.
you know,
wait a minute.
what's funny about this?
Wait a minute. Hold up there. I got to get to this question. We're going to get back up.
But if you look at the mess of education, there are no rules that are followed right. When you start
Yeah, but-
talking to folk in education, there are so many exceptions, exemptions, and
Yeah,
waivers, and let's
right.
close my eye and look the other way.
but-
So that's just one of millions.
That's just, yeah, but
I'm
that-
all about trying to get
Okay,
my
but
kids
that's why
educated.
that's why I directed the question to the president.
And
That's
if I
why-
sit here and
okay.
acquiesce and don't say
No,
anything,
no,
I
okay,
think I
but
should say
no,
something.
but okay. I want to ask about the Longwood.
Bring it. I love it. I love it. It's
I
about
wanna ask
debate.
Go Crossfire.
No
Got it.
problem to you. No problem. President. I want to ask about the Longwood, the vote for the Longwood funding, and a lot of people say that the African American kids are getting hurt with the charter schools, and they had a vote at the Bank of America. They voted for, I guess, a low rate interest rate, and Loretta Walsh, to her credit, was the only one that voted against this. I think we had one person who abstained about this vote. Anybody have anything to say about that?
Let's fill it. Let's fill this school. One of the schools already is at 34% of the required 80% enrollment that they need to operate, opening in August. That's the Academia Alonzo. They're on probation by the State Board of Education. There's another school as well. Is it the Delaware Met? The Delaware Met School.
Three of the four schools
three of
are
the four schools.
40%, and they need 80% at least of what they said they would be able to get students to
Enrollment.
in their application.
They're going to get a waiver, don't they?
But
Well,
well,
naturally,
that's some of the wavering that's going on. Is that Moyer?
Not wavering, they're going to get a waiver.
Well, yeah.
Because Moyer could only come up with half of their required students, and
We had all of our.
and they
the
let
other
them get
board.
away with that.
But-
But
Can I-
three of the four that are going into that building may not be allowed to start because they don't have the kids.
Can I ask about the do foundations and do Wall Street profit?
But Darius, you threw out the fact City Council voted on something.
Yeah,
and you mentioned one abstained and one voted for it. And I want to sit here. You're not going to let me respond to that.
Steve, I'm going to let you respond because you can make sure I let you respond. Go ahead.
They came to us for conduit financing.
What is that?
Meaning they had the building. CEB had the building. In order to do the renovations, what they needed to do was get financing. So we used conduit financing through the City of Wilmington, which permitted them to get lower bond interest rates. We are not on the hook for it, they are on the hook for it. The project was going to happen in our view. It was going to happen. We fought hard to get assurances that urban kids would be in those charter schools. We fought hard to make sure that they guaranteed us that was going to be the culture, not just this year, but 10 years from now. City Council was not in a position to stop them from coming. Therefore, what we did, we appropriately negotiated what we thought we could get for our kids and permitted the conduit financing. Didn't cost us anything. It's just a tax, it's a financing concept that comes from the federal government, which says that you can do this for nonprofits in your community to assist them in enhancing your community. So we weren't going to stop them.
Okay.
So from a practical standpoint, it made sense for us to join in.
Okay, I'm ready to take phone calls, and the number is going to be 661-4468. In a couple of minutes, we're going to start taking phone calls. Go ahead, Nancy, and I'm going to ask another question.
I just was going to briefly go over that we had busing that got started, and that raised a lot of issues. But to complicate it, then we had charters came in, choice came in, and then something called the Neighborhood Schools Act about 10 years ago. And all those things layering on have created some of the problems that we have. And the city of Wilmington had the foresight at the time, with Theo Gregory as the president of council, to say, well, now's the city's chance to say we want a Neighborhood Schools Act, because all those years, these districts in Wilmington had never had higher education for the kids. And so there's one by one that the old high schools have been sold off or turned into other things. So you had only elementary schools in the city. So the Neighborhood Schools Act comes along and says, well, we want kids to be able to be in their community school. So in a way, this community education building may offer that opportunity, but the one of those things why we can so easily say everything's done in Delaware with a nudge and a wink, and Theo, I'd like him to talk about it, is just that he was the one to commission a Neighborhood Schools Act report for Wilmington, and it was ignored. Wilmington wanted to have control over neighborhood schools.
Wait a minute, okay. You said one of the problems I see or concerns I have, like Wilmington Charter School, Cab Callaway, I don't see them on Channel 28 every week asking for enrollment. And what I see is these other schools, it's kind of like, to me, like, let me give you a good example. The NBA, I think 30 teams on the NBA. One owner is there, he can pick LeBron's, he can pick the best 15 players and put them on one team and play everybody else and say y'all not measuring up. He got the chance to pick the cream of the crop. And that's how I see a lot of these schools. I don't see Cab Calloway, I don't see Wilmington Charter Schools coming on this show trying to recruit from our community.
Well, this is my district, so I'll take a shot at this one. Charter School of
Correct.
Wilmington. Charter School of Wilmington is a charter school. Cab Calloway is a magnet school. Cab Calloway is run by Red Clay School District. Charter School is run by its own board. Two separate programs. I have obviously greater concerns about the creaming that is done by the Charter School of Wilmington. They require an entrance exam and then they go to a lottery. However, Cab Calloway actually in the past 4 or 5 years has done a much better job. The school district has gone out to our Title I schools.
How many minorities?
I don't know, but it has increased.
No, well, I mean,
Is it enough?
Okay, look, it increased from what, 5 to 20? But what I'm saying is, this is my concerns, that a lot of great kids. I know this young lady, daughter, brilliant. We had to go to a senator. She can get into school on her own merits. I know a lot of kids can get in there on their own merits. They don't get a shot at Cab Calloway. They say it's a bunch of excuses, and these are the problems I'm having. Like the bank up there, you got a school's going to be 5 schools going to be there, but the concerns I have is that it's not nothing to stimulate.
The
No
concern,
windows.
the concern is outreach.
Look, my concern is this. The city of Wilmington does not have a voice. We have no authority on how our kids are going to be educated. That's my problem. And I talk on this all the time, and as far as I'm concerned, all the games that are played to ensure that people get their kids educated well, I don't begrudge them. Go ahead and do that. But can you just give my community a voice in how our kids should be educated? And that's what's wrong. And all the policies are such that it's more segregation, more educating one population and pushing the other population in the corner. That's my problem.
Okay.
Can we get a voice? Can we come to the table in some way and be a part of this? We had the old Wilmington School District was working fine. Busing 76, 78, dismantled all of that. We don't have a voice. And what we're doing, we're trying to fix the unintended consequences of DSAG. And in doing so, we come fully around again to segregation, and we don't have a voice. We're worse off now than we were before.
That's what I'm going to say this last question, then we're going to go to the phones. I was listening to Michelle Obama, the First Lady, say that we're more desegregated now than 60 years ago. But I'm going to ask one question. With these foundations, do Wall Street profit from charter schools? And if they do, how?
Well, by the mere fact that there are quite a few charter school operating organizations.
Let's do this. If you got 3 different tests in the last 6 years, DSTP, DCAS, and what's the
Smarter Balance.
Smarter Balance. Well, that was corporate America designing those tests and selling those tests. All right, let's go to Common Core curriculum. That's corporate America doing that. Let's go to online curriculum. That's corporate America doing that. So yes, they are profiting from it.
Can I just add that?
That's just to name of 3.
I was at Legislative Hall for a discussion between the House Education Committee and Mr. Secretary Murphy, and they were bashing him on that exact subject to say, what about these tests? When the second test, you said it has to be a growth model. We got to spend all this new money, get all this stuff together because we need a growth model test. And that was, 3 years ago?
DCAS.
DCAS. And so it was supposed to be able to measure the kid, beginning, middle, and end, but now they're jumping off from that and saying that we need one that's just going to test at the end. So everybody in the room was saying, how can this be? How can you come at us every other year and say we need a new test and abandon all what you said just a couple years ago? Why should we believe you?
661-4468. And also for people who, they're talking about Secretary of Education Mark Murphy. I
Mike.
believe I'm saying that.
Mike
But-
Murphy.
but-
Wait a
but-
minute. Also, let me just say something. And his experience, his background is he was a gym teacher for 3 years, and I believe that then the foundation sent him here. He didn't go through the regular things that the regular superintendents or whatever, Secretary of Education. So we have a man here who's setting policy. He's only been a teacher for 3 years and a gym teacher, but he's setting policy for our children. I'm gonna start take a phone call. I gotta take this phone call.
These tests cost millions of dollars.
Hello,
to
you on the
design,
air?
Execute.
Good evening, everybody. Julius, Pastor D, Mr. President, and guests. God bless you all. Good evening. Two questions, Julius. One to President Gregory, and the other to the guy from Ridgeway. Theo, I agree with your analogy. I would just add that they are not just being pushed in the corner, but rather being pushed into prison by the circumstances that you described. Here's my question. With respect to choice, sir, and charter, I have a special needs son, Wickens Bush. His group is kind of okay because they can be. There's a smaller group of special needs based on their medical, psychological, etc. impairments. However, the larger group that you try to choice, who are behavioral, seems that it's harder to choice them because it's going to make somebody's numbers not what they want them to be. So you have more kids over here at one who have these behavioral, absentee, etc. issues. Let's keep them over there. And I'd like you to address that for me. Is that in fact the case? And Theo, the question to you, Mr. President, before I hang up, much to Merv Dougherty's credit, many of the things that are happening in Red Clay are due to his, as a superintendent, active participation in the resolutions, such as behavior mod programs. I'm wondering, is there any, Mr. President, voice that we can have with respect to behavior mod programs, like the Celeb program we run in Red Clay? Because to me, the Christina I'm thinking about and the African American superintendent is doing a poor job in helping and allowing us to have a voice in terms of suspension, expulsion, and all of that.
Okay, Pastor.
Okay, please, Julius, my children are in these districts.
Okay.
And I want to hear what the president thinks about that in terms of discipline. Am I clear in my questions, gentlemen?
I think
All
you
right.
do.
Okay,
You are.
thank you, Pastor D. All right, let him answer the question. Thank you. Okay.
The first question he asked was this thing of negative cherry picking. I call it negative cherry picking of special needs kids. He asked you the question. But again, choice was supposed to be absolute. And so was charter. It's supposed to be by lottery, a blind lottery. So to pick over kids and decide which ones you're going to take and not take because of special needs is just totally inappropriate. Also, one of the things that I heard was you tied special needs to behavior. I found out, and I've lived it for 3 years, a special needs kid is not necessarily a behavior problem.
Yeah.
It's to the contrary. They are meek and mild many times, unless you get into some psychological kinds of things. Then you may find that out. But they are not your behavior kids, the mean-spirited ones, things who are just doing things just to be doing it. So I would have to address that. But in terms of special needs kids, the parent needs to decide if the public school and or the public charter school can meet their kids' needs and then apply. When they apply, it should be absolute. It should not be this testing and all these other things to decide whether or not the kid is going to get in there. Behavior modification. If I had my school, if I ran a school, I have a social worker in the morning, social worker midday, where the kids passed off to the social worker, and a social worker in the evening. Around that, I would create some behavior mod kinds of stuff. But in these urban schools, we need smaller classrooms.
Yep.
And we need social workers.
Yes, indeed.
Can I say, I watched this guy who did a study. They said African American kids do better with the encouragement, and other kids do better if you just give them assignments. I know that they say that schools started getting bad when they took out prayer, but I believe that schools started getting bad when African American men stopped being teachers. And I was listening to your buddy Nancy on 1150 during the daytime from 9 to
Alan Sunny?
Yeah, Al, he had a great show about charter schools. He said during the SEG, a lot of whites didn't want black men teaching their kids. And so I know two teachers at Howard High, Mr. Anderson, who was a special ed teacher at Howard, who graduated from University of Delaware and graduated from Penn with his master's degree in mathematics. He had a great, he was helped the community as a special ed at Howard. When DeSeg came, he lost his job, and so did Mr. Gaines, who was a barbershop teacher, and then he lost his job. So Mr. Anderson ended up going down to the port, and who was surely qualified, but they didn't want to say, they didn't want, when the other kids came in, they didn't want their kids being taught this. So, you know.
You see, and I go back to, I'm tired of talking about what people are doing.
Hello,
to ensure that
you on the air?
Yes, good evening,
I'm
Joyous.
Good evening.
This question is for the gentleman in the Red Clay School District. He said he's a teacher for special needs. I would just like to know his opinion on this. Children have to made to become to school that have mental problems, they can't learn, that sit in school class with other children that can learn. I would like to know his opinion on that, because the district says you still have to take them. To me, that's like babysitting them.
Well,
Okay,
yeah.
I'll let him answer, okay?
That's
Okay.
It's
Thank
a
you,
fair
babe.
question, and it's actually a question that I get quite a lot. According to federal law, children are legally required to FAPE. That's a free, appropriate public education. Yes, you know, I can't sugarcoat anything. There are often times when children with special needs are placed in classrooms. Sometimes they're called inclusion classrooms. In a classroom of 25 children, there may be 5 or 6 children with special needs. A dually certified special education and general education teacher may be in charge of that class, and those children may cause disruption. Some of those children with IEPs, individualized education plans, or behavior plans may be pulled out of class for small group instruction from time to time. But what do we do? The caller alluded to, can't we just keep them home if they have mental health issues? Well, there are steps that are taken in extreme circumstances where children are on homebound, but they tend to be for more chronic medical illnesses than behavior issues.
I gotta take the call.
Yeah.
You're on the air. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hey, what's going on? Hey, how you doing, Julius? Man,
How you doing,
it's really
Church?
a pleasure to talk to you. That's a good thing. This is Len, man.
Hey, Len.
And all I want to say is I want to say hi to Nancy, because Nancy's always been a advocate for the neighborhood. But what I want to say to you is this, I'm going to say this. Miss Young, Miss Cooper, Mr. Wright, Miss Dobson,
Yes.
Alan Hart, God rest his soul, Clavon Jones, God rest his soul, Mr. Reed, all of these people, you know as well as I do, when you went to this school, you knew that they had your best interests in mind. And they were good people, and we all received a good education. You're doing a good job. I like that they put you in this position. And look, it's going to take a little time for you to develop into what you're getting into. But trust me, don't let Theo take over your time. So you keep him where he's supposed to be, because he's going to try to grab all your time. I'll say it on a positive note, but I'll say this also, is the fact of this, is that when Dr. Lowry and Dr. Lyles left, all right, when they left from the governor, one of the things you can always look back and say, they weren't gym teachers. They had 3 years. They were very educated individuals, but they saw what was about to happen. And we were at that meeting on the 12th floor when it was obvious that the governor had other plans for them, and they just looked at it and said, this is not what we want to be a part of. And the race to the top money was never sent for us to be able to educate our own. The governor, out of his own mind, said he's not interested in putting schools in the city. He just wasn't going to do that. And I think that's setting a precedent to where in which if you can't trust us to manage our own money, then that means you can't trust us to educate our own kids, which means that you have a problem with us educating our own kids. Then that means that there's something that's beyond that factor to where you're going to bring in an individual, as I said before again, a gym teacher, who's going to be able to dictate what needs to be done, and he has no background in education, it's the wrong way to do things. And Theo, you know better.
Hey,
and I'll leave it at that.
I know better.
Wait,
What?
wait a minute.
Let me just say one thing about
We all
Theo.
want to say something.
Whoa.
Okay,
What?
I don't know.
I
Well,
don't
let
know
me say.
where you get that from.
Okay, well, let me say this about Theo Gregory. Theo reminds me of Mr. Hart and the people who we dedicated the show. I've seen Theo do a lot of great things with these programs, and I appreciate, and it's sad that Moyer Academy was taking from him. But I've seen all the good things he did, and I know all the good things he did.
Can I make one comment
Go ahead,
about?
go ahead.
I'm going to post some on my blog about numbers in a charter school that I've received today. Somebody took a look at the scoring, and there's no doubt about it that this charter school has raised or managed to keep a higher school because they have let the kids go that weren't performing. And so all I'm saying is that it's a struggle because the way this system is set up is that teachers, No Child Left Behind said, teachers, you're going to fail
on the air.
if your kids fail.
Go ahead, you on the air.
Hey, how's it going? Hey, just had a quick question for the president or Nancy. Maybe they can what they talk about as far as the cream of the crop goes in charter schools. But how is it that like an AI high school can hit their mark every year, but like a Dickinson won't hit their scores? And I'll hang up and listen to the answer.
Thank you.
Well,
I heard that today. I was reading one of the Kilroys was hoping we'd get him on today. He didn't want to come, but he writes a heck of a blog, and he wrote that the AI feeder, that the red clay feeder is messed up. That more cities are closer to AI, more city kids are closer to AI, but they're fed out to Dickinson and McCain, and so AI is somehow got some political influence that's going to say, you know, if I don't want to, we won't have to take as many city kids if they're have a lower income and a lower start.
Go ahead, you on the air.
Let me answer the question.
Hello, my name is Jerome Saunders. How you doing?
How you doing?
All right. You mentioned some very important people. I was a member of the George Gray community staff when we gave the reunion. Mr. Hart mentioned your name as when we dedicated our show. I mean, we dedicated what we were doing to Mr. Hart, Mr. Jones. He mentioned your name, Julius. He spoke very highly of you when you were a kid. And he also mentioned some other people's names, which I'm not going to mention.
Spike and Ishmael.
Excuse me?
Spike and Ishmael, but go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, you know, there was some people at George Gray that did some great things for us, you know.
Yes.
And when you were coming up, the school district was altogether different. Now, what is going on now in the schools, I don't know what's really happening. So, I mean, it's a whole different time now. Like the person that came up and said something about Theo has done some great things.
Great things.
With the kids today. You know, what they did with him, he should say something about that. You know, I'm going to hang up and listen. Because
Okay, because we run it down. I appreciate
This
it.
is what I want to speak to, what Nancy said when the question was asked about Dickinson versus A.I. DuPont. Generally, the way to describe that is feeder patterns. And I'm not going to suggest that all the urban kids are the ones that causes you not to meet your mark, because you have some poor white Hispanic districts in the city and in Newcastle County. You have to look at them feeding to Dickinson versus who feeds to A.I. DuPont, and that kinds of manipulation causes.
Go ahead, you on the air.
Mark.
How you doing, Julius? This Sam Guy calling.
Okay, Sam, I gotta hurry up and wrap it up. He's giving me the. Can you make it real short?
All right. Well, I needed to lead to something. Let me just say this: local control. Wilmington residents didn't get local control. That's the fundamental, constitutionally recognized right of people to control the educational system where the children go to school.
I got to wrap it up,
Wilmington
Sam.
kids don't have any.
And that's what I was saying about a voice. We need to be involved in.
I got to wrap it up. And one thing I do want to say that the charter schools. I'm gonna wrap it up. The charter schools with administrators, they can pay them $400,000, but they don't have to disclose it. These are tax dollars. They can pay them anything they want, and they have a law not to disclose it. It's a lot more things. We need another time, another show. But thank you. Thank everybody for coming on, and thank you again.